So this is my thought process under or around Van Zandt Inc. If you look at the history, in 2010, it was actually started under someone's name that was Eric Rothschild, CEO. September 29th, 2010.
Well, this is certainly a big update in the legal drama playing out between actors Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni. The judge has dismissed one of the complaints and laid out his reasoning in an order that is more than 100 pages long. We dug through the paperwork to bring you the very latest.
Justin Baldoni's legal battle with Blake Lively just took a new turn. On June 9th, a federal judge dismissed his $400 million countersuit against his It Ends With Us co-star and her husband, Ryan Reynolds. Access Hollywood confirms.
In a shocking development that takes Hollywood legal battles to new depths of deception, court documents reveal Blake Lively may have been secretly communicating with herself through a shell company while manipulating the legal system to obtain private phone data from a former employee, then turning around to deny that victim access to the very evidence stolen from her. This isn't just celebrity drama, it's a disturbing abuse of the court system that has legal experts questioning whether Blake's tactics cross the line from aggressive litigation into potentially illegal conduct. Court filings reveal that Blake Lively has been operating behind a mysterious entity called Van Zandt Inc. The company filed what appears to be a sham lawsuit in September 2024 in the Supreme Court of New York County against no one. Yes, you read that correctly. A lawsuit with no defendant. The true purpose? To create a legal pretext for issuing subpoenas to obtain private communications from Jen Abel, a former employee of PR firm Jones Works, who later joined Wayfair's team. Blake Lively is hiding behind a shield called Van Zandt Inc., explains a legal analyst familiar with the case.
Baldoni and his production company Wayfair Studios sued Lively and Reynolds for defamation in January and sought at least $400 million in damages.
Through this shell company, she subpoenaed Stephanie Jones and Jones Works for all the records and data from Jen Abel's phone, and in that process, no one was notified. What makes this particularly disturbing is the revelation that Blake Lively's attorneys have been essentially talking to themselves in court. The same law firm represented both Blake and Van Zandt until recently, when Van Zandt suddenly hired outside counsel, a move that raised red flags with the court. Blake Lively talked to herself in court via her shell company, and her shell company's attorneys talked to her attorneys. So Blake spoke to herself in court filings and acted like they weren't the same person, notes one observer. It's almost diabolical. The scheme didn't end with obtaining the private phone data. Once Blake secured the information through her shell company, she implemented a strategic protective order with an aggressive confidentiality clause in her lawsuit against Justin Baldoni and Wayfair. This created a catch-22 for the victims. Blake could use information obtained through Van Zandt against them, but they couldn't access or use the same information to defend themselves. Now we know why Blake Lively set up the protective order in this case and why she made it so incredibly hard to file discovery and to access discovery.
According to documents obtained by Access, the judge also dismissed the director's libel lawsuit against the New York Times, in which he accuses the paper of working with Lively to smear him.
Explains a legal expert. The protective order has a confidentiality clause, and if you deem something confidential, you have to sign a non-disclosure agreement. This means that even if the victims became aware of the information Blake obtained, they couldn't legally use it in their defense without risking contempt of court charges. It's a strategy that effectively silences the opposition while allowing Blake to cherry-pick what information to use against them. Perhaps most disturbing is how Blake's legal team appears to be taunting Jen Abel, the former employee whose phone data was allegedly accessed without her knowledge or consent. Court documents show Blake was filing a document telling her, "Hey, we already provided you a copy of this discovery. It's over here in an action that has nothing to do with you. And here there's a subpoena over here. But some of this stuff is marked confidential. And by the way, even though it's marked confidential and you have it, you can't use it." When Abel went to court to compel disclosure of the Van Zandt connection, she told the judge, "This is her shell company. We need this information. It's our right. This was the means that they used to get this discovery." Blake's attorneys have reportedly admitted they used the Van Zandt lawsuit to obtain discovery, yet simultaneously argue that Van Zandt is not party to any litigation involving Miss Lively and the Wayfair parties.
We know in 2010, Blake and Ryan met on the set of Green Lantern. This is what I believe. In 2010, Eric Rothschild was put on paperwork as CEO. but it was actually Ryan and Blake that were running the company. And how do you come out as starting a Van Zandt company, Vancouver and Tarzana or whatever it is, the place that Blake Lively's from?
A claim that has legal observers shaking their heads in disbelief. Blake is saying Blake is not party to anything. It's just a loophole she's using, and she's gaming the court because everyone knows Van Zandt is Blake. One analyst observes, "This is the most blatant abuse of the court I've ever seen." Throughout these complex legal maneuvers, Blake's team has maintained an aggressive stance, accusing Abel and Wayfair of using the proceedings to continue their negative media campaign against Blake Lively and her associates. In a remarkably tone-deaf filing, Blake's shell company claims Abel's motion appears to be yet another attempt by Abel and Wayfair parties to use this legal proceeding to continue their negative media campaign against Blake Lively and her associates. This pattern of claiming victim status while actively targeting others has become a hallmark of Blake's legal strategy. Her team consistently portrays her as the target of a retaliation campaign, while apparently engaging in aggressive tactics of her own. Blake is always the victim, notes one observer sarcastically. It's pretty evil and really despicable to tell her that Jen has access to her communications when we know she doesn't. Her entire phone was stolen. Court documents suggest this may be part of a larger coordinated effort between Blake Lively and PR executive Stephanie Jones, who is currently engaged in her own separate legal battles. Jones is now seeking information from Meta and Pinterest to identify people behind social media accounts critical of her, claiming they're part of a conspiracy involving Baldoni's team.
How do you come out as starting a company with your girlfriend when you are married? Your girlfriend you met on the Green Lantern, and when she's in a long-term relationship. But what I've been reading is to have someone like Eric on the paperwork in 2010, it's because you want secrecy. You want to keep things private.
Meanwhile, Jones herself stands accused of improperly accessing and sharing Abel's private communications. I think they crafted this scheme where Blake on one hand would sue them and Wayfair, and then on the other hand, Stephanie would file suit against Jen and Melissa so that they both make it look like this side is the bad side, suggests an industry insider. I have a hard time believing that this wasn't coordinated. The scheme appears designed to create the impression that both Blake and Jones are victims of the same conspiracy, when evidence suggests they may be working together to target former associates who have fallen out of favor. What began as sexual harassment allegations against Baldoni has morphed multiple times. Initially portrayed as serious misconduct, Blake later downplayed the severity in interviews while still pursuing legal action. Now, Jones's filings referred to misogynistic and toxic behavior on set, yet another shift in characterization that has observers questioning the consistency of their claims. It's interesting how they're starting to frame things differently, notes one legal analyst. First it was sexual harassment and sexual misconduct. Now it's misogynistic and toxic. The allegations keep evolving. This pattern of shifting accusations makes it difficult to determine what, if anything, actually occurred on the It Ends With Us set that warranted such an aggressive legal and PR response. Court documents and industry sources suggest the catalyst for this entire saga may have been far more mundane than initially portrayed. A simple workplace disagreement that spiraled out of control when Blake refused to apologize.
The filing also states that Judge Louis J. Lyman did note that Baldoni's legal team can amend the allegations relevant to the claims of interference with contract and breach of implied covenant by June 23rd.
Blake couldn't apologize for and admit she was a jerk to Kirsty, the director, and that's where this all came to a head, claims one source close to the production. Rather than acknowledge a moment of unprofessional behavior, Blake allegedly pivoted to claiming she was the victim of retaliation, setting in motion a legal and PR strategy that has now expanded to include shell companies, confidential subpoenas, and accusations of conspiracy. The fate of this increasingly convoluted case now rests with Judge Lyman, who must decide whether to allow Blake's tactics to continue or put a stop to what many consider an abuse of the legal system. If the judge even buys this for a minute, I will have no faith in Judge Lyman, says one legal observer. If he even entertains this, out the window is any faith or hope that there could ever be justice in this case. The judge's ruling will determine not just the outcome of this specific dispute, but potentially set precedent for how far celebrities can go in using the the legal system to silence critics and former associates. This case highlights disturbing trends in how powerful figures can manipulate both media narratives and legal processes to protect their image and target perceived enemies. By operating through shell companies, implementing strategic protective orders, and leveraging connections with PR professionals, celebrities can create a virtually impenetrable defense while simultaneously mounting aggressive attacks on others.
You want to keep who's actually behind it private from the media. What better reason than an affair? And I've also found information that the reason you might switch it to put Blake's name back on or officially on is to keep the paperwork nice and clean because a new project's coming up.
They're delaying all of this in the hopes that their biased judge, who's clearly already picked a side, will not take into account what Jenel went through and just dismiss the case, suggests one source. They truly believe that they've won in this court. The tactics on display also raise serious questions about attorney ethics and court oversight. If lawyers can facilitate schemes where clients effectively communicate with themselves through shell companies while denying opposing parties access to relevant evidence, the fundamental fairness of the legal system is compromised. Lost in the legal maneuvering is the human impact on those caught in Blake's crosshairs. Jen Abel, whose private communications were allegedly accessed without her knowledge or consent, now finds herself unable to even access the evidence taken from her to defend herself. It feels in a way sadistic to me, says one observer. I do not at all envy the people that are on the receiving end of this because it's abusive. Meanwhile, Justin Baldoni, whose reputation has been severely damaged by the allegations against him, continues to face an uphill battle against opponents who appear willing to use every legal and PR tactic available, regardless of ethical considerations. As this legal battle continues to unfold, industry observers are watching closely to see if Blake's aggressive tactics will ultimately backfire. While her team clearly believes they have the upper hand, the exposure of the Van Zandt Shell Company scheme may prove to be a turning point, and legal experts suggest that judges typically take a dim view of parties who attempt to manipulate the court system through shell companies and deceptive practices. If Judge Lyman determines that Blake has been acting in bad faith, she could face sanctions or have her protective orders dissolved. This motion is consistent with Abel and her counsel's pattern of using the court's docket to advance public relations narratives in the media.
Well, I would say it could have been a new project, maybe, because all of a sudden her name showed up on it officially in 2023. A new project related to, I don't know, a sham Doe lawsuit to get text messages and a subpoena to blindside Justin Baldoni. That might be why Blake needed her official name on it rather than Eric Rothschild.
Blake's team claims a statement that, ironically, could more accurately describe their own apparent strategy. What began as a seemingly straightforward harassment claim has evolved into a complex web of legal maneuvering that reveals just how far some celebrities will go to control narratives and silence opposition. For an actress who built her career playing America's sweetheart, Blake Lively's courtroom tactics tell a very different story, one of ruthless determination to win at any cost. As one observer bluntly puts it, if you're going to be in this industry, you have to have a thick skin. If you can dish it, you better be able to take it. But if you're trying to destroy your client's life after they fire you, that is the opposite of having integrity and the opposite of acting professional. The court of public opinion may ultimately prove more difficult to manipulate than the legal system. As more details of these tactics come to light, Blake's carefully crafted image continues to erode, replaced by a portrait of someone willing to go to extraordinary and potentially unethical lengths to prevail in a battle of her own making.